The opening scene sets the stage with Lorenzo Vitale, a formidable enforcer, en route to his secluded winery in Sicily, accompanied by his grandson. Upon arrival, Lorenzo instructs his grandson to remain in the vehicle while he cautiously investigates. To his dismay, he discovers the lifeless bodies of many of his henchmen. As he proceeds to the basement, he encounters Robert McCall, a retired U.S. Marine and DEA operative, held at gunpoint by two of Lorenzo's guards. Lorenzo inquires about Robert's presence, to which Robert reveals that Lorenzo possesses something he shouldn't. Following a brief exchange, Robert eliminates the remaining henchmen and Lorenzo. Upon exiting the winery, Robert spots Lorenzo's grandson in the vehicle and instructs the boy to remain still. However, as he approaches the car, the boy shoots Robert in the back and escapes swiftly. Despite the injury, Robert manages to board a ferry to return to the mainland. Later that night, while driving along the Amalfi coast, Robert pulls over and falls into unconsciousness due to the gunshot. After some time, a local carabiniere named Gio Banucci discovers him in this state and decides to assist him. Gio transports Robert to a remote coastal Italian town in Altamonte, where a doctor named Enzo provides medical care. Upon regaining consciousness, Enzo informs Robert that Gio saved him and inquires about whether Gio rescued a good or a bad man. Robert is unable to provide a clear response. When he attempts to return home, Enzo intervenes, and after 3 days of treatment, Robert begins to walk with the aid of a cane. One day, he ventures outside to explore the town discreetly, evading the police presence. Eventually, he finds himself at a local cafe where he encounters the owner and waitress, Amina. Despite ordering tea, she serves him their finest coffee. Shortly after, Gio arrives at the cafe during his regular visit, accompanied by his daughter Gabby, and meets Robert. While Amina entertains Gabby, Gio hands over Robert's car keys and mentions that he hasn't inspected Robert's belongings yet. Gio also informs Robert that he has parked Robert's car behind the station and can retrieve it once he feels better. In the following scene, Robert makes an anonymous call to the CIA Financial Operations Group and speaks to an agent named Emma Collins. He provides her with information about the winery in Sicily and its connection to the illegal drug trade, masquerading as legitimate business transactions. After conveying this information, he disables the phone. On the other end, Emma shares the information with other CIA operatives. Robert spends the next few days immersing himself in the local culture, forming connections with the townspeople. During this time, he learns about the Camorra, an Italian mafia gang, that intimidates and extorts the town's residents for regular payments. One day, Robert witnesses a local seafood vendor named Angelo being assaulted by a high-ranking Camorra member named Marco Quaranta. Before leaving, Marco threatens Angelo, indicating his intention to return the following week for payment. Subsequently, the gangsters converge on a substantial building where the leader of the Camorra, Marco's brother Vincent Quaranta, attempts to forcibly evacuate the premises. It becomes apparent that the Camorra is executing an ambitious plan to commercialize the town by constructing new hotels, resorts, and casinos. Meanwhile, Robert and Enzo share a pleasant dinner conversation, and Robert offers to help Enzo with daily errands. Simultaneously, Emma and other CIA operatives, acting on Robert's tip, arrive at the winery to conduct their investigation. There, they uncover millions in cash and bags filled with illegal narcotics concealed in a storeroom. Surprised that these activities were off their radar, Emma and her colleague, Frank Conroy, decide to delve deeper into the matter. On a rainy day, while Enzo examines Robert's wound, Robert asks why Enzo treated him without involving an ambulance or the police. In response, Enzo reflects on Robert's earlier question about being a good or bad person and how Robert had no answer to it. Enzo believes that Robert's silence signifies that he is a good person. The next evening, Robert prepares to leave the town but is halted by the sound of a bell. He observes the townspeople rushing to Angelo's shop, prompting him to follow them. It is revealed that Marco and his gang have set fire to Angelo's shop due to his inability to make the payments. Despite their dominance, the townspeople can only watch helplessly. In the midst of these events, Robert gradually recuperates, becomes integrated into the local community, and deepens his friendship with Amina. He also becomes accustomed to the local cuisine of Altamonte, all the while growing increasingly concerned about the Camorra's influence on the town. On a regular day, Robert enjoys coffee at Amina's cafe, where he notices Emma discreetly trying to take his photograph. Robert confronts her, suggesting that she capture the photo from a better angle. Emma questions how he possesses such precise information about the winery's true business, but Robert offers only vague answers, advising her to delve deeper into her remaining work. Later that day, Joe goes to pick up his daughter from school. During this time, he receives a call from an unknown number, informing him that Gabby's school day ended earlier than usual. Concerned, Joe inquires with one of the teachers, who reveals that an officer had picked up Gabby a short while ago. In a state of panic, Joe rushes home, only to find his wife and daughter held captive by the Camorra gang. Marco proceeds to beat Joe in front of his family, punishing him for interfering in their operations. The gang threatens to take the lives of Joe's family if he interferes again. In the evening, Robert observes Joe leaving Enzo's office with bloodstains on his face. Curious, he inquires about the matter, and Enzo explains that such incidents are common in many towns due to the Camorra. Enzo likens the issue to a cancer without a cure. The next day, Robert visits the church, where he meets Emma once again. She discloses that Lorenzo Vitale had been on Interpol's most wanted list for a decade and that his operation was vast. Intrigued by why he selected her for the anonymous tip, Emma questions his intentions. However, Robert diverts the conversation by suggesting that she focus on why Sicily is targeted for these smuggling activities. That evening, Joe and his family are enjoying dinner at a restaurant when Marco and his associates interrupt their quality time. Marco demands that Joe assist them in preparing a boat for their illicit purposes. Robert, who is also in the same restaurant, overhears their conversation and urges them to leave the family alone. In response, Marco threatens Robert to stay out of matters that don't concern him. In a calm but firm tone, Robert expresses his growing attachment to the town and its people. He warns Marco to take his business elsewhere and conveys the consequences if he doesn't comply. When Marco continues to ignore the warning, Robert swiftly incapacitates him, demanding that Marco leaves his gun on the table and exits the restaurant with his men. Shortly thereafter, the infuriated Marco plans to return with his henchmen and eliminate Robert. At one point, Marco holds Robert at knife point and threatens to end his life. Nevertheless, Robert skillfully overpowers Marco by twisting his hand and driving the knife through his neck, ultimately ending his life. The following morning, Frank contacts Emma from Rome to inform her about a recent station bombing. It is revealed that the money discovered earlier in the winery is also linked to a similar terrorist act. Emma realizes that the Camorra is directly funding terrorism by smuggling drugs into Sicily. Furthermore, she suspects Naples serves as the primary transit point for drug transportation and speculates the involvement of another team in Naples. Determined to uncover the entire chain, she commences her investigation by interviewing key members of the Camorra. For this, she requests partnership and access with the head of Naples's police. Later, the same police chief is seen attending Marco's funeral at Vincent's mansion. During the gathering, he informs Vincent about the involvement of CIA officer Emma, who is investigating their illegal activities. Vincent, who is mourning his brother's death, becomes furious and severs the chief's hand. He threatens the chief to focus on identifying the person responsible for Marco's death. Meanwhile, Emma receives a call informing her about the police chief's predicament. Shortly after, she also receives a call from Robert, who reveals the Camorra's involvement in the drug cartel, closely tied to the earlier station attack. Robert's call inadvertently saves Emma's life, preventing her from becoming a victim of Vincent's planned bomb attack on her car. Everything she has learned about the Camorra. Frank assures her that he will handle the remaining operation. That evening, Vincent takes Joe and his family hostage, threatening to shoot them in front of the entire town unless his brother's murderer appears. When no information is forthcoming, Vincent shoots Joe's ear and threatens to kill him with his next shot. At that moment, Robert reveals himself to Vincent and implores him to release the captives. He expresses his readiness to be taken away and tortured but insists it should not occur in front of the townspeople. However, the arrogant Vincent refuses, stating that the locals must witness the consequences against the Camorra, causing the gangsters to retreat. The same night, Robert infiltrates Vincent's home and stealthily eliminates his bodyguards one by one. Vincent, awakened by a drop of blood on his forehead and the shattering glass above him, narrowly escapes. Robert approaches him and compels Vincent to ingest a lethal dose of his own drugs. Despite Vincent's attempt to escape his mansion, Robert pursues him. The next morning, Robert visits Emma at the hospital, and she expresses her gratitude for saving her life. Robert drops a bag of cash on the floor and shares the story of Greg Dyer, a man who lost his pension in a cyber attack. This revelation makes Emma realize that Robert had followed the trail of the attack to the winery, eliminated Lorenzo and his henchmen, and retrieved the exact cash owed to Greg. In the subsequent scene, Emma travels to Boston to deliver Greg and his wife their lifetime earnings. Greg inquires about the identity of the generous benefactor and questions why someone would go to such lengths for a stranger. Emma responds that she would also like to know the reason. After her departure, Greg happily instructs his wife to unpack everything, as they no longer need to sacrifice their house. One day, at the CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, Frank hands Emma a package containing a diary and a note from Robert. To her astonishment, it's her mother's diary. As she connects the dots, she learns that Robert is none other than a friend of her parents from the CIA. In the final scene, the residents of Altamonte celebrate their victory in a football match. Robert, now fully integrated into the community, also participates in the celebration as one of the locals.